you all of that. So hi everyone, Romy and John from Octopus Computers. Many of you know us already, but if you don't, we are an IT support and managed service company, a friendly one. We basically help companies from growing team to enterprise size to help them with securing their system, help them with their emails, help them with day-to-day IT support, and many more things that John's going to mention with Office 365. And yeah, so if you're already with us, thank you. And if you're not, please come and chat with us. We are very nice. So yeah, and John is our general nerd. John, if I let you introduce yourself if you want to.
Sure. My name's John. I am, as Romy said, a big nerd. I own, run, and operate Octopus Computers and a couple of other projects and things when I get bored as well. It's my job to talk to you all today about 365 and answer any questions about it.
Great. So yes, so today we are going to be covering some easy tips to help you work smarter with Outlook, Teams, OneDrive, show you a few hidden gems in Microsoft 365 if you use it, or if you're not, might be a good one to start doing. We also share how to stay secure, and also the best ways to manage files and collaborate with your team using Office 365. And of course, we'll wrap around with a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please do ask everything in the chat or the Q&A section in the three dots more at the top of the screen or somewhere on the screen. You should see more with the Q&A. So post all your questions in that, and we'll take the last 15-20 minutes to answer any questions you may have. John, I'll pass it on to you. Thank you.
Sure. Romy is in charge of changing the slides today, so if I start looking grumpy and yelling and waving, it's because she hasn't moved us across yet. I'm going to try and keep this all quite top level so that we can dive into anything in Q&A if needed. I can honestly, and have done, talk about 365 for days at a time in terms of training and teaching. So we'll try and keep this on the surface, and if there's a particular app that someone wants to dive into in Q&A, we'll try and probe from there. So firstly, a couple of simple things we can do to sort of maximize your 365. Something I recommend everyone does is to understand the licenses that they're getting. There are last count over 900 different Microsoft licenses that you can apply to a single user. That is everything from an extra piece of file storage to 365 Business Standard or Business Premium, which are the most common ones. And then you've got individual app licenses as well, and all sorts of different complexities with those. It's important to understand them so that you're getting the correct license applied to you. This can often result in some cost saving. If you are needing to narrow it down, if you've got people who are email only, for example, they could move to Exchange licenses. If they need access to only files online, they can be 365 Basic. And it really helps you get the most out of that cost per month if you're on those subscription models. The other thing I always recommend people to do is if you're going for 365, really lean into it. There are so many apps available within 365, which we'll come on to. It is so much more than just email, Word, Outlook, and Excel, and PowerPoint to a lesser extent. There's 40, 50 apps, I think, included in a business standard license. So you've really got to lean into it to make the most out of it. And I think there is a tool for most problems within a business that you can solve in 365. Additionally, all of your collaboration should be happening the same way. And that doesn't just mean emailing each of the files. We'll come on to later how best to collaborate, but things such as Teams, working collaboratively in the same document at the same time. If you're building out reports or anything like that can happen. Sharing files and folders externally through SharePoint and OneDrive is also really valuable. And then you've got tools like Planner and things which we'll come on to as well. And finally, something really simple that I think people should be doing is getting their policies and permissions in place. There are loads of things which are called e-retention policies to make sure that the wrong files are deleted and kept, and accordingly you can classify them for confidentiality. And if you get your permissions right at the start, it makes sharing things out in the future very straightforward as well. You can do that through groups and roles so that you're not having to apply it to each individual. When you onboard a new starter, you just assign them to a department and then the permissions flow out from there. So getting those structures in place at the start really makes it easier to scale and grow with Microsoft further down the line. Next slide, Romy. See. What we're going to do is we're going to whistle through the more common apps, and then I'm really going to dive into some of these more detailed ones. So I'm not going to talk about things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. I'm just going to assume that people know how they work. OneDrive and SharePoint is confusing. OneDrive is your personal storage, and it's also the tool used to sync SharePoint, which is your business storage. SharePoint could also work like a company intranet, and you can access documents and files and post things to it, although honestly, intranets are a dying breed. They're very rarely used properly. Unless you're in a very large public sector role, I normally see them deployed. We generally recommend people steer clear of them. There's also tools which I'm not covering today, such as Microsoft Sway, which produces visual web pages from presentations. It's a nice way to present information. Sometimes a brochure online looks far better as a Sway that you can publish and share out. And there's also tools like Kaizala, which is WhatsApp for Microsoft, but frankly, it is so little use to people that I'm not going to go into it. If you're really keen on any of those, obviously chuck a question in, I can explain them in more detail. Other more standard apps, things like Access, we're not going to go into. I'm really ruling out the stuff I don't want to cover. OneNote is a nightmare to get operating correctly within a business setting. But again, if there's something specific about those you want to know, post them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll go through them. Other than that, I'm going to start diving into the next apps so that we can hopefully teach you about some fun things. There will be videos playing at the same time. Try not to get distracted by fantastic technology and moving pictures. Microsoft Teams has had quite a few overhauls. Originally, it was a Skype replacement. It's become much more of a collaborative tool now. That means that you can actually pin different tabs in chat. Most people use just the chat function. But you can share documents, files, folders, project plans, all of it within a single chat or a team or a group or a channel. All of these basically are different words for the same thing. Additionally, you can integrate third-party apps into your teams as well, so that you're able to run an awful lot of the business from a single place. It is a fantastic communication tool above all else. It works very well for collaboration. We use it internally all the time. You can also write in there rules. You can use Copilot to really enable and boost it up. But we would really recommend, especially if you're running remotely or in multiple different spaces and places, Teams is a great way to collaborate and share those pieces out. And really should be your starting point for finding out more about 365. Once you're comfortable, yeah, lean into Teams, really get that going. Create your group chats for pinning things out. And then when you're running perhaps this particular project, that's where we could run a channel, put the people on that project in there, put the project plan in there through Microsoft Projects or Planner, which I'll show later, maybe link for files and folders specific to it. So you start building out a roadmap and it's all in one place. Really good for large scale manufacturing, sort of longer projects or programs work really well in there. But yeah, it's use cases depend obviously, but try and lean into Teams for your communication, which takes us nicely onto the next one, which is very good, Teams Phone. What a lot of people don't realize is that Teams can also be used as a full VoIP platform. So this means that all your international and national calls, internal and external, can happen from Teams. We actually use it internally. So we have ported all of our 01572 numbers and our 0116 numbers straight through to Teams. And from there, we're able to dial out and basically people can use it as their VoIP platform. It means that we don't need handsets. We get to get away with just headphones and headsets all the time. It also obviously works with the mobile app, which frankly is better than most of the VoIP mobile apps I've seen out there. Microsoft do have a head start in this because of Skype, which they acquired. So I really would recommend, if you're looking at a VoIP alternative, have a think about Teams. The other advantage that I come back to for Teams Phone is that you own your number yourself within Microsoft. So normally when you have a VoIP contract with a telecom supplier, the number is ported and owned by that vendor. So if you are with Gamma, your number actually belongs to your Gamma vendor. If you are with Daisy or BT, your number belongs to that BT or Daisy vendor. And it gets quite complex to move and control it later. When you're into Teams, suddenly your number is registered to your own Microsoft tenant, which regardless of where you buy your Microsoft from, is with you. And you can have complete control on that on a monthly basis. There's no 3-year contracts on Teams Phone either. It does all the usual things: call recording, call queues, auto attendance, hold music, voicemail, out of hours, presence-based ringing, pretty much anything. And we've done some quite complex routing on it before, so there isn't really a limit. But I would really say it's very cost effective, about £15 per user for 2,000 minutes, I think, which pools. So do have a think about going for Teams Phone when your voice contract comes up, because it often is a saving and an improved user experience. On to the next app. Microsoft Planner. Planner is a bit like Trello if you've never used it. It's a very good way of organizing projects and to-do list tasks when you're working as a team. So if you're used to tools such as Asana or Trello or any of these planners, it works very nicely. You can organize things into buckets, you can produce Gantt charts or timing plans, and you can assign those to calendars. Again, the advantage of using the Microsoft apps is that they are collaborative across themselves. So if you do start using Planner and you assign it to somebody, you can assign that task to their calendar. You can put in email and Teams alerts accordingly. It can embed in Teams, which I think is what we're seeing on the video playing there. And you're able to sort of track progress against different files, which can also link in from your SharePoint. So if you are doing a level of project or program management, Planner is a really good way to sort of get started. Now, if you're working on very high level projects, or you need to start going into quite detailed Gantt charts, Microsoft Projects is also an option. Projects is an extra license, so it does have an extra cost associated, and honestly is only used for normally very large scale or high level projects with an awful lot of moving parts. Planner is a brilliant way and a much more modern way to manage that. It works better for what's known as sprints in the tech world. But also Planner is free, Projects isn't. So if you kind of pick and choose, start with the free one, see if it works for you, and go from there. And the video is still going. There we go. Bookings, cool. Microsoft Bookings is it's two-pronged. So firstly, let's talk about Calendar quickly. You can share your calendar out to replace Calendly so that people can book meetings with you. That is not Microsoft Bookings in entirety. Microsoft Bookings works that little bit above. You can add in services. It used to be able to even support e-commerce, and you can let people pick and choose the types of calls that they want. It's a nice way of elevating your diary management when you want people to start booking in with you. And you can also schedule it across multiple resources at the same time, as you can see in the video there. It means that when you're working internally and people need to book for you, they can see what's going on. Much like you can see there, it works like Calendly Premium, so they can pick the length of their call, capture all the details as a separate web page, and it'll add automatically to your diary in real time. It's a really great way of managing that diary management. No one wants to be sending these emails back and forth. How about Tuesday at 10? I can't do 10. Can you do 3? That doesn't work. We've all done it. We've all seen it. It's much easier to send out a bookings link or a calendar link if you're not comfortable with bookings and go from there. It will also do reminders, and I think if you're really keen, you can even enable text reminders, but I think there's an extra cost for that as well. So Microsoft Bookings is a good one to sort of explore and have a play with. It's very easy to make yourself look good. Whizzing through these. If only there weren't so many of them. Microsoft Clipchamp is an app which was originally, I think, part of Windows and then brought into 365. It is video editing. So you may have noticed that Romy posts the occasional shorts and videos on our LinkedIn pages. That's because we're quite good at video editing thanks to things like Microsoft. It is easy. It really is. I don't think you need to be a wizard at video editing. You'd have to learn Photoshop or Illustrator to do these. As you can see from the clip, it's a doddle. You can also do a straight record from there. You can do a presentation, get it appropriate from the same video into your different formats so that when you're running on Instagram or LinkedIn, it's in profile, but when you're putting onto YouTube, for example, it's in landscape. Additionally, what it's not covering here is another app which we'll come on to. It will also embed things straight into Microsoft Stream, which, there you go. On to the next slide, please, Romy. Because Clipchamp is just the editor. Microsoft Stream is effectively an internal YouTube. It is really good if you're running very large webinars. I think it supports up to 10,000 attendees. We aren't at that scale yet, so we use Teams. But additionally, Microsoft Stream is fantastic for internal video resource. If you're doing a series of onboardings and your processes are the same, Stream is a great way to store that knowledge base and roll it out to the whole team. As good as physical documentation and typed up SOPs are, having a video explainer guide recorded once and then building out a media library for your team to access is a great way to scale out. We see this quite a lot in enterprise and large business where there are a lot of different moving parts. If they need to explain a different process or perhaps just how to apply for a time off request or anything like that, a quick video into the Stream channel and then everyone can access it going forward. It's also really good if you're having to onboard somebody who's never used perhaps your CRM or your marketing system or even Microsoft Dynamics. If you were to start recording small little videos and store them all into Stream, you've suddenly got a video knowledge base to roll that out internally, which helps enormously when it comes to onboarding and scaling up the business. Massively underused. Microsoft Stream, do check it out if you use video for training. Next one is Microsoft Lists. A little bit more than just like it sounds. You'd expect it to be a to-do list. That's actually called Microsoft To Do. Andy, I've seen a question. I'll answer it at the end if that's okay. I'll put it into Q&A. Everything that I've taken you for so far, though, unless otherwise stated, is free and included with 365. So including Microsoft Lists, Streams, Clipchamp, they're all included for the most part. There's often premium versions, but yeah, very few people need them. List is a really great way of turning perhaps some standard checklists into a process. So if you have, for example, an onboarder checklist or an interview checklist or anything like that to check your hiring process, use lists. Some of the templates in there are fantastic prompts to work with, and it's also a great way of collaborating on those tasks as you sort of delegate them out. If you imagine a recruitment process, it's never just one person, unless you're very small, which is perfectly fine. But even then, it's very rarely one thing to go through a hiring process. You have quite a few steps to go through. You can bring it all together into a single point, track what's going on, share them, update your calendar, and bring in all these different resources again. It sits quite well with Planner, depending on how you want to break things up. Planner is a good way of sort of moving forward for projects. List is a great way of standardizing these operations. So don't use Planner for repeatable tasks. Use lists for that. On to the next one. Oh, I'm going so quickly. Microsoft Loops is new. Let's put it that way. On the back of Copilot, which we'll come on to shortly, Microsoft introduced this new app called Loops. The idea of Loops is that it sits above, well, it's Microsoft Loop, but Loops is what we'll call it. It sits above Teams in terms of this collaboration piece. They used to have a tool called Yammer, which was like Twitter for business. And the idea is that we bring everything into a single point of communication. Now, it is not as good as Teams for communication, but it is better than Teams for collaboration. So you may be able to see from here what they're doing is they're pulling in a whole host of different resources into a single loop for one project. Now, what's nice here is that if you are running project software such as Basecamp or even a larger Trello plan, this would be a really good way of doing it above Planner. So they've covered that gap between high level CRM project software, tools like Basecamp, which really excel there, and Planner, which was quite basic. And the idea is that Loop, through its collaboration, will bring it all together. It's so new that I can't tell you if it's good yet, because I haven't yet had to play with it. But I would say give it a go if you're looking to elevate what you're able to do with Planner, which is a little bit more bucket list. So, tick a few things off, move it across, to do, done, pending. Loops really does bring that collaboration piece into it, which was lacking in Planner. So have a look at the templates in there, see if it's a good fit perhaps for something you're doing. As I say, it's still not for standardized operations. That's definitely where Lists excels. But Loop is a good way, hopefully, to bring in lots of different tools into place if you're not happy with the Teams interface, or if you want to take it above just a chat message. The next one up is Copilot. Copilot does not have an E, but because Romy helped with the slides and she's French, this is Copilot. So Copilot is Microsoft's AI ChatGPT. I will call you out, Romy. It is the equivalent of Google's Gemini. It is very much their way of doing it. They charge extra for it. It is expensive, and I personally don't recommend it. Now, there are people who use it, and it has its place for summarizing for your documents, for doing intelligent searches, for producing content, for doing all the things that these GPT tools do. Copilot is very good if you have a very good data structure. So if you have loads of company data, which is easily read, stored, filed, and the metadata is up to date, Copilot is able to search it appropriately and actually answer your questions. All of that being said, it is still not as good as an AI tool as ChatGPT, or as any of the other ones out there. It is not good at producing video or pictures at all. I wouldn't recommend you do it because it's crap. I don't think it even can do it to a certain degree anyway, and refer you to different things. It is not as good at text generation, and its content search is fairly limited. At the moment, Copilot is playing catch up, and paying extra for a tool which is not as good as free or cheaper alternatives just doesn't make sense commercially. It is being used in very large organizations. So do keep a lookout for it improving as it gets better at reading base level data. Most companies, for example, will have 50 to 100 documents on an SME level that they actually want to pull Copilot information from. Once you get into the thousands, it's able to truly start summarizing that and pulling from multiple different sources. It works reasonably well in finance for that basis if you're able to feed it a lot of data. At the same time, though, you are just as good to write a separate GPT that pulls live market data in a whole host of sources elsewhere anyway. It is double-edged. It's not for everyone. I do think if you're going to play with AI, Copilot is not the way to get started. That's probably my one takeaway tip for it at the moment. If you want to really test what it can do for you, though, let me know. We can go into it in a lot more detail. AI, of course, is very trending, should we say, at the moment, but there are much easier ways to play with these tools than getting started with this one. I will no doubt be asking and answering questions about Copilot, but yeah, that's what it does. Power Automate is an if this then that engine. It's a great way of automating any repeatable tasks you may have. So that is to say, if you regularly say, when I get an email in that says X, do Y, this is where we can come in. Now, Power Automate has had loads of facelifts over the last 12 months with the rise of its Copilot tools so that it's able to do things a little bit more intelligently than it ever has before. You used to have to be very granular, very process oriented to say very simple things, basically a bit like Zapier. What you can do now, because of how it's broadened its APIs, is you can connect it to lots of different apps. You could say when somebody subscribes on my website, add them to this MailChimp list, which it's already doing. Additionally, send a email to my team to let them know we've got a new subscriber, add a reminder on my to-do list to contact them and book in a scheduled call to say welcome to our mailing list. A whole host of automation tools you can do. You can also do some quite clever things like sentiment analysis in Power Automate. That could be if an email comes into anyone in our business and the sentiment looks negative or grumpy or frustrated, alert me immediately, raise it with the team and do the following things. And that could even go down to send them an email back immediately saying, look, I get the feeling you're not happy. Here's a link to my booking. If you'd love to, I'd love for us to book a call and talk about this. So it does do some quite powerful things, but you've got to get really specific on what you want it to do. And that's often the way with Copilot, Power Automate, all of these tools. You need a use case before you just start deploying it. The other point to note on Power Automate is it is now built into Windows 11. You will see it sometimes at the bottom right below the clock if you expand it, little blue arrows there. It's because it can run flows in the background of your Windows as well as just in 365. So if there are repeatable tasks that you think every time this happens, I do this, a perfect use case of Power Automate. There's a number of free ones you can do on Power Automate. It has some limitations once you start getting quite involved, but it certainly is included. Flying. And the next one, really a nap after this, is Microsoft Dynamics. This one, of course, is paid for. It is a huge ERP and CRM tool, depending on how you want to run your business. Now, I always include it when I'm talking about Microsoft, not because I know how to deploy Dynamics, because it is a separate beast in itself. You really do need specialists to do Dynamics. But because if you're going to already use all of your projects and communications and maybe even your VoIP and your flows and your AI within 365, it makes sense to use your business operations there as well. Most organizations, and I say that broadly sweeping, about 95% of them, would be perfectly comfortable doing without a large ERP tool. The gap after that, Dynamics covers it, and there are very few companies where it wouldn't be able to support them. It's able to run everything from inventory management to marketing to full CRM, sales pipeline, admin, HR, inventory, all of it. So do check it out as a use case. It is not the cheapest on the market, not even by a long way, but some of the licenses in there can then become free if you're looking for additional agents to log in and support. So there are ways to sort of make it more cost effective than it may first appear. You also have the advantage of it being very broadly supported. So there are a lot of Dynamics companies out there who can support, whereas if you choose a little bit more of a niche product, it can get a bit more difficult. So do have a look to see if Dynamics can help automate or at least run some of those operations in your business. If you're using Excel spreadsheets, if you're using expensive third-party apps already, it can be a nice way to bring that all into a single point. They've also got hundreds of use cases on their website for each sector because it's a big drive and push for them at the moment. So do have a look at the solution section under Dynamics if you go to the website, see if it's something where perhaps they've already solved any problems you might be facing. And that's my whistle-stop tour of the apps. There's still more to talk about, which is why I went so quickly. Please let me know any and all questions about those. I know it was quick. I know I spoke too quickly, but please drop all of them in. Romy will collate them into Q&A and probably fire them at me at the end. I also want to touch quickly on how to stay secure within 365. There's a couple of really things that people can do within the admin center if you have access, or at least you can ask to be done if you don't. The first one is to enable what's called security defaults. It's a really easy baseline button. You go in there, you turn it on if it's off. It does things like ensure MFA, multi-factor authentication, is on. It enables it. It does not enforce it. That's a separate point for that, so we can talk about the difference. It also checks things like, are we allowed to share certain files out? How does external sharing work? Am I allowed to invite guests or unauthenticated users into my environment? A load of lockdown permissions, basically, to make sure that you are secure. It's not the be all and end all. It won't solve all your problems, but again, it gives you that good baseline to work from. If you want to take it up a notch, Microsoft's Secure Score is fantastic. It is also, in most cases, overkill and very security conscious. So never aim to have a full Microsoft Secure Score, as bad as that sounds. With every tick box that you enable, your life gets slightly more complicated. If, however, you go to that URL, the security.microsoft.com/secure score, and we'll include that in the next newsletter that goes out as well, so you can click on it. It is a great way to give you your current score for within Microsoft. Now, it doesn't account for third-party apps. If you have additional softwares that do some of what Microsoft wants, we, for example, use something called Sonic Wall Cloud App Security. Microsoft doesn't count that. It doesn't account for that level in there. But if it's something you're administering yourself, Microsoft Secure Score not only tells you where you're going wrong, it tells you exactly how to fix those problems to boost the score. And that can be everything from external sharing permissions to changing your admin permissions within the organization to make sure things are working a little bit better for you. Too much talking. The next one is Microsoft Purview. Purview is the new e-discovery section within Admin Center. It's incredibly powerful for analyzing your data and finding out how people are working within the organization. They've pulled together what were 3 or 4 previous apps, which I won't bore you with the names of. I've purged them from memory. But this is a good way of, what Delve was one of them, so delving into what people are doing and how it works. If you need to run e-discovery, which is searching or message tracing, it can do that for you. If you need to run any data governance checks, so if you do have any data requests come in, freedom of information requests, rights to be forgotten, any of those compliance-based pieces, they happen within Purview. There is a free version of Purview, and then Microsoft can bump you up to Azure Premium or Entra Premium to gain access to Purview Premium. Most organizations, we've done quite a few recently, don't need the premium apps though. So if you do want to just have a look at your data, if you do get any of these requests in, start in Purview, you go to Admin Center Purview, go from there. And if you want to have a look, or if you want someone to grant you Purview permissions, ask your partner and they can enable them as well. The one below that is your policies. Policies are massively overlooked within 365. Most people don't use them. A simple policy, which I've referenced a few times, would be external sharing. Am I allowed to share files to someone who is not within my organization? By default, you're allowed to, but you may want to change this based on the roles within the organization. You don't necessarily want a new starter sharing out the master password file with everyone. Please don't have a master password file. But if you do, you certainly don't want it shared out externally to people not within the company. Simple policies can put that in place. You're also able to do things such as document classification. So you can start saying whether something is confidential, internal only, this kind of role. Within Word and Excel, that rolls out very simply, and you can do it for all files. But once that's in place, it will then dictate the permissions and policies around those files based on how you've classified them. And you're also able to enable that automatically so it can attempt to automatically classify all files and folders. The other one to look at would be whether you enforce MFA. So I talked previously about how security defaults enables multi-factor. You would never want it disabled, but you're able to actually enforce it as well, which means that every user must sign up to using their authenticator app. It's not optional not to have it in place. It's a great way to really tighten the screw and make sure everyone's playing by the rules. So do make sure your multi-factor is enforced, not just enabled. It happens so often where people get a phishing attack or social engineering attack, they let their password leak, and because they don't have MFA enforced or enabled, they gain access to their account. I see it once a fortnight for people coming to us, and every time it's because it's cost them 5 figures. Please don't fall for it. Make sure you have your multi-factor enabled. On to the next one, Romy. There we go. Tips to manage files and collaboration with your team. 1 second. What this refers to, as you can see, is permissions. We need to make sure that your permissions are correct. That is because if you don't set them up properly, the new starter will have access to everything. So make sure you do this by group or by role. Decide on your departments early on, and then when you have a new starter join, you can just allocate them to the appropriate groups, and their permissions will always be in place. Just do it at the start. Very few people do this until they suddenly realize that their data structure is out of hand, the control isn't there anymore, and now they've got to work backwards for 20 or 30 headcount. No one wants that stress. So do make sure that those permissions are what you want to see going forward for how you think the business will scale. It also helps you segregate your data so you could have different sites within your SharePoint. Most common one would be all company and directors, but once you get a little bit more granular than that, you can go by department. So you could have sales, marketing, HR, accounts, operations, and so on. And then the roles obviously dictated by the different permissions you put in place. It also really helps you protect your data, going back to security, because one person can gain access to an account, but they can't necessarily see everything. I have already mentioned Teams a few times because I'm a big Teams lover. I've drunk the Kool-Aid, but it is a great way for communication internally and externally. You can add guest users to channels. So if you do want to bring in external consultants, perhaps onto projects, it's also a great way of managing that. So if you're working on, say, a marketing rebrand, you could invite your external marketing company in. They could be a guest user for that channel. They can then collaborate within it with all the files, with all the project process, and it gets everyone communicating in a single point. It is so much better than emails going back and forth all the time. There is still a place for email. Sometimes you still want things written down in detail and sent out. I'm not saying get rid of email. I'm saying for smaller things, for anything where that gap is, this could have been an email, we needed a meeting, that's where Teams can sit for those quick messages. It also means that all the communication is happening within your business estate. So if you do need to do any auditing, if you do need to do any reporting for the Information Commission's office, you're covered within Teams. The e-discovery and Purview will find that. Something which always bugs me is emailing large files. Just don't do it. Right click on it, OneDrive, share them out. Just stop emailing these large files. They really bog down and kill files. Don't know what happened. My audio went off. Am I back?
You are.
Good. Yeah, they just beeped and went off. That's fun. So stop emailing files. I used the example of a school in Rutland who will remain nameless. The lovely receptionist there built an enormous PDF about sports day. She used some high-res images. It was about 50 megabytes. She then attached that email, sent it to all 200 teachers in this large school, which means that file now exists 201 times, no, 400 times, because it's in her sent items 200 times, because she sent them individually. Said in every inbox. Every person who received it then went, that's useful, and saved it. And they filled the server within about 24 hours, and it crippled the entire organization. When she could have said, this file is live, here's the link, view it. It works externally and internally. If you need to email something, and there's always a place, I understand, but sharing the link to access that is so much better. It gives you more permission control. You can revoke access to that file if something changes. You can control the versions around it. It's the way to go. Shared files and folders are a brilliant way of doing this. If there's a client you're working with on a regular basis where you need to start sharing files with them, create a shared folder and give them the guest permissions to access just that folder. That way they can perhaps upload files to you rather than emailing them, rather than getting WeTransfer links or download links. They can upload them straight to your SharePoint. You can then collaborate on them, even have a rolling planner file in there that they can access and check things off. You can do the same with lists to make sure that they've adhered to your process. And then you know when things are happening. You could even use Power Automate to let you know when a new file is added to that folder. It will email and alert you. So you could do so much more if you start collaborating with these tools rather than relying on email to do it. And this is why Microsoft has and always will put limits on things like email attachments, on the size of mailboxes, because they firmly believe that that level of communication needs to be happening a different way. And I do find it difficult to argue with them. There you go. That is a 30-minute whistle-stop tour of how to do 365.
Well done.
I need a nap.
You can have a drink
Again,
now.
apologies, it was so quick. I know I whistled through those, but if you can let us know any and all questions about those different apps, we can go through those in more detail. I know that it was very top level. As I hope you can appreciate, I could go into some serious detail for each one of those. So fire away
Andy
with the
just
questions.
asked a question. So we should use Teams more with customers to communicate.
I personally would. It depends on the customer and how regularly you speak to them. So if there's a client where you have this really regular stuff, a really big client, you could add them as a guest to a channel, and then that channel can be controlled by whoever you want to administer the client and whoever else needs to see it. Additionally, if you're running a project with the customer, they can be a guest to that channel. They can see the project status. They can see the files going on. They can upload things to it. It's a great way of bringing everyone together. Now, obviously, you need the client's buy-in as well. We've learned this being the IT team. Just because we're very comfortable with 365 and Teams doesn't mean the people I want to collaborate with are. So it can be a step too far if they aren't using the tool internally. But it is a good place to sort of start with. Ask the client if they're using Teams already. If they are using it internally, ask if you can add them as a guest to a channel and start building things out from there. You can look at using it for voice calls as well if you aren't already, but it's a good way to sort of, start with it internally. It also means you can message the client directly rather than WhatsApping or picking up the phone for a really quick question. It, of course, will notify and prompt them on their side. What else you got for me, Romy?
I've got a specific question, I think, about their own organization. I think we might want to answer that separately. Neil asks if you know which version of 365 is this company using at the minute. I think, do you want to say that out loud or for visibility?
I know Neil's company. They use
Yeah,
Google Workspace.
Google Workspace.
They do
Yeah,
have
no, they
access
don't.
to 365, but Google Workspace is their primary tool for email and files and folders. So
We will have a webinar about how to
yeah,
make
well, I
the
think maybe
most
we
of
need to cover
Google
Google
Workspace.
separately. All of the tools that we talked about effectively exist within Google in a different way. But yes, there are ways of doing it. Chances are, though, you will be signed up either for an apps license or a business standard license if you have access to 365 as well.
Okay. I've got a few questions that I received by email. I've got one that says, can Copilot give me a quick summary of a long chat in Teams so I don't have to scroll through everything?
Yes, it can do. As can GPT. But yes, if you're getting a
Yeah.
very long chat and you want to ask Copilot, can you give me an update of what I've missed? So say, for example, you're away for a week or two, the channels keep going. You can say, can you give me a summary? You can also get it to do the same. You could get it to say in Outlook, can you prioritize for me through the emails I've received? Which ones really need my responses now, which ones are urgent, what's important. You can get it, to do these sort of prioritization for you. If you're getting really long emails through, you can get it to summarize them. Similarly, you can get it to do it with documents. If someone sends you a 30-page report, you could say, hey, Copilot, tell me the top level here, what's going on. Now, the advantage of doing that over GPT is that your data is still staying within 365. Copilot is good at making sure that everything is retained there. So that is an option. Yeah.
Okay. Another question, is there a way to see what everyone on my team is working on without having to chase them up? I think it's regarding the Planner app.
Say again, sorry. Is there
a way to see what everyone on my team is working on without having to chase them up? So basically have a broader view of all the projects, I think.
Loop would be a good way of doing that. There used to be a tool called Delve, which I think they've pulled and merged into Loop. But have a look if Delve still has access. It shows you how everyone has accessed all files, what they're doing, what they're up to, their email frequency. It depends how deep into someone's operations on their day-to-day basis you want to go. If you are working on these collaborative tools such as Planner, that is a good way of checking the status of important tasks, which I really would recommend. But yeah, have a look. Basically, start with Delve. Have a specific use case that you have in mind, because you can do an awful lot of discovery along this. You could also use Purview to tell you daily or weekly activity, chat messages sent, email sent, calendar, busy bookings, these kind of things. Run that all as a report. Use Power Automate to then send you that, and even get Copilot to summarize it for you. So you can imagine all these tools starting to come together, which is the whole advantage of using 365.
Nice. Lucy's got a A little. I don't think it's a question, but she thinks that the permission will help them as they're not sure how to edit or apply them. They constantly
Mhm.
attach to emails or use WeTransfer, so that could be very useful for them. And they also think that there is big anxiety around sharing through OneDrive and then the recipient being able to edit anything with Sense. So
Okay.
yeah, I
So a
think
couple of
it's
things you can do that one. When you share, you can actually set the permissions to make sure that it is read only, or
mhm.
perhaps that it's edit only and they can't download, which can also be useful. And you can also send things for e-signature as well, I believe, in 365 now. So you're able to sort of really granularly decide what you want to do. Something I'll often use is not allow them to edit, but allow them to comment on the document. So I can then go through and approve or reject their comments as they're going through it. You can also specify these on a folder, which is a nicer way of doing it. I think if there's something specific from a training perspective, we're more than happy to sort of show someone how that works. I would say it is definitely a better route than WeTransfer. From a security perspective, your data within OneDrive at least is staying within your control. If you're putting it someone else, it's going out for someone else to do it. So yeah, that's the way to do it.
Lucy's got another question. I don't know if this is stupid. There's nothing stupid, Lucy. It's why we do
Not at
things
all,
like
yeah.
this. But when I get anything that is read-only, I can just press enable. Is that possible if it's read-only?
Okay, so that's slightly different to a file permission sharing coming out.
Mm.
When you open a Word document that's been emailed to you, for example, it will open as read only on the assumption that you only want to read it. And then Word being semi-intelligent, it's like the best feature it's ever added in the last 10 years, gives you the option to change it from read only to enable edits. And what this is doing is it's creating a local copy of the file that you want to change. That is different to someone sharing out a file with you and making it read only within OneDrive. That it's not stupid at all. It is confusing. Microsoft's terminologies are a mess, but that is what's going on there.
She says thank you.
Good, I
Andy's
got one
got a
right.
question. We've been trying to call external teams, the app members, but it's
Okay,
not active. Example, it does not work with external people.
sure.
John has been trying hard to help us make it work. Our Taiwan office says it's our fault, and we say it's theirs. Can John
Okay,
help?
could be one of two things. External permissions. The easiest way to do them in Teams is to get them added as guest users.
Mm.
Now, to get them into a guest user, their permissions on their side have to allow it. It could be that their secure score is too high. It could be they don't actually have authenticated Microsoft accounts, or that it's failing something on that side as well. But if you can add them as a guest user, they no longer become external, they become external bracket guest. I told you Microsoft terminologies are a mess, but that way you're able to contact them using Teams without using a dialing plan, which is of course different to Teams phone. So that's probably the easiest way to get that sorted, is to make sure they're added properly as guest users within the tenant and then add them to a channel or a chat.
Andy asked if you could summarize all of that in an email so you can send that to them.
You know what? I'm pretty sure Romy will use Copilot to do exactly
There
that
you
at the
go.
end. Don't worry. What else you
Uh,
got for me?
Nick asked, sharing of Outlook contacts within the business. Where is best to store them so we can all access, please, and not have duplicates?
Sure.
Can this
Um,
be
Go on.
linked to Business Central as well?
Okay, cool. Two for one.
Yeah.
There is an app called Microsoft People, which is probably the best place to start with that. It's a really hidden app. It is slightly different to contacts. It is certainly different to autofill, which I come up against all the time within Outlook. What a lot of people mistake is that when I type in ROM within the to list of Outlook, it brings up Romy and I'm able to click on her name. That doesn't mean I've added Romy as a contact because I'm lazy. I haven't done it. I know who she is. But as an example, this is often something that happens. So if you don't start adding them as contacts as the first instance, get them done and then the contacts exist. Once that's sorted, you can go into the People app in 365, portal.office.com, log in. It will take you to a button called Apps. You can click on that, go to People, see your contacts, and manage sharing. All of that being said, contact sharing has and always will be, I'm trying to think of the nicer way of saying shit show, hard within 365. It's never worked too well. It's always been clunky. It's something that has been struggled with for about 2 decades, but the People app is slightly better at doing it. Business Central would be, going to the second half of that, a better way of doing it. If you were able to use Power Automate, would probably be what I recommend, although check within your dynamics if you're able to hook it straight into people. But you could get it to automatically say, every week, use Power Automate to pull everything from your contacts or your people app, scrape them into a single spreadsheet that's changed, so any new things go into the sheet. That sheet then gets uploaded to Business Central to update your contacts. Would be the simplest way of writing those. There's probably also a live connection between them. Say I'm not a Dynamics expert, but I know that you could definitely hook them up one way or another.
I've got one other question. Thank you, Nicola says. Can I transfer a call to a colleague straight from Teams, even if they're working remotely? But I guess, yeah, doesn't matter.
Absolutely. You can do that both internally. So on this call, I would be able to, for example, add someone in. If you felt we needed to bring someone in, I could add them immediately. I can do the same on internal meetings. And if you are using Teams phone, it works exactly like a normal VoIP system was. So I can see who's busy, who's on Do Not Disturb. If I call them and they're busy and their line's engaged, it will notify them if I let it, or depending on your own ruling, it will go to voicemail, but you can transfer things internally and even externally if you have the calling plan. So if you need to bump it to their mobile, do that sort of thing as well.
Brilliant. I think that's it in terms of question. I don't know if anyone else has anything to ask. I give you 5 seconds. And if not,
Speak
we
now or
can
forever hold your
speak
peace. Yeah.
now. Yeah. But hopefully that was useful for you. I wanted to share with you a form. So if you can fill that form at the end of the chat or whenever, it's basically for our next webinar. If there is any specific topics you would like us to go through, we can do anything. Oh, there is another section at the end as well if you want to ask a specific topic you want us to go through. That would be absolutely fine. Yeah, we'll try to do that. We try to do webinars every 6 weeks, 2 months. We'll see when is the next time. I think it will be August or something like that.
Yeah, it's either going to be very late July or early August.
I was going to say, yeah, we'll have to see who is
Yeah.
where and where is who. But
Yeah,
yeah, no,
I'm happy
so
with late July.
absolutely. No problem, Andy. Very, very, very welcome. I hope that was helpful, and that if you have any questions, please email us. You've got our contact details, I think, or give us a call. We're always happy to help. You know that. Yeah. Thank you so much, John, for wasting all your saliva on
No
us.
worries at all. I will stay here for an extra 5 minutes in case anyone wants to sort of hang around and ask a question at the end. But if not, thank you so much for attending.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can watch the full recording, or you might be watching this on YouTube at the moment. So if you do think of any questions, also do please drop us an email or drop Romy a line, and we'll come back to you.
Yes, absolutely. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
No problem at all. Thanks a lot.
See you
All.
later.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.